Passion is a key characteristic of all successful people. You might know those people that are just passionate. They have a specific energy that gives a vibe to the people around them. In the upcoming panel discussion, our industry stalwarts will share their perspective on how passion fuels business innovation. I would like to welcome Abhishek Malhotra, partner, McKinsey and Company, to moderate this panel discussion.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to the Business Leadership Summit, specifically the session on how passion fuels business innovation. I'm actually really glad to have a great set of panel, and over the next hour or so, we will spend time discussing this topic a little bit more in detail. But before we get started, just a quick introduction. Let me introduce the panel pretty quickly. So we have Vineet, Gautam from Bestseller, very, very popular brands that I'm sure all of us have used at some time or the other. And if you haven't, please take this opportunity to go and buy Jack and Jones only and others. Then we have Devendra Chawla, called DC, helping us, at Spencer's Retail. Again, a popular daily use brand, which has really done wonders scaling up and adding, brands and banners to their portfolio. And last but not the least, we have Lars. Lars, who's in Germany right now, who's the SVP Asia and the MD Southeast Asia and India of Swarovski. Very, aspirational and a lifestyle and a luxury brand, right? So great set of panel, everyday clothes, grocery retail, and something we can all gift and wear ourselves. So great set of panel, and look forward to having an engaging discussion over the next hour or so as to how passion fuels business innovation. So that's the topic. Now, just to set context, I'm actually sitting in my office in Nariman Point after many months. It's something that I've just started doing this over the last 18 months. If I was to say it's been a once in a lifetime experience, that would be understating it, right? Significant change in all of our personal lives. We've seen, and each one of us have gone through, kind of totally a life-changing opportunity. And hopefully fingers crossed, as we all get vaccinated and the pandemic kind of gets some sort of under control, it's been a trying time, and also for businesses, right? Significant, if I was to shift the lens, significant changes in how the consumers have evolved, right? So I think 3 or 4 things that McKinsey has been researching and looking at, which is not surprises to everyone who's listening in, but just to put it out there. First is, has been the growth in online, right? As a country, we have, a population of about 101.3 billion. 160 million people shop online, right? And this is beyond services and other things, right? These are e-commerce transactions. That number will grow 3x. It'll touch about 500 million in the next 7 to 8 years, right? So that's one. I think this has got a clear jump up over the last 2 years. Secondly, I think given what's happened, I think the awareness around health, well-being, physical, mental has gone up. It's seen, I'm sure DC would have stories of how people are buying, lots of products around that. The entire ecosystem around consumer needs has changed. Vineet will, I'm sure, talk about how casual fashion has become. I had to kind of dig out a formal shirt to come today. That's been a growing trend. But I think inherent consumer needs have changed, right? And I think that's something to think about. I think home is becoming a center, from people becoming home chefs to home bartenders to, a lot more decorating, home office, school. I think the entire definition of what a home stood for and has evolved. And I think a lot of consumers are looking at this very, very differently in terms of space, in terms of how to do that up. And last but not the least, right, one of the things we looked at was what we call shock to loyalty, right? I think in one of our recent research, we found that 90% plus people had tried a new brand, tried a new store, tried a new format, right? Initially more about supply, your favorite place was not available. But I think, especially for the three panelists who run businesses, this is both an opportunity, but is also a threat, right? So in this dynamic, right, as each one of the three panelists have been tasked to develop the business, lead on, the ask always remains is, right, how do I stay ahead of consumers, right? How do I innovate? How do I tackle my competition by giving something that's better, more value adding, more innovative to consumers? And that's how we'll frame the discussion today, right? What over the next hour or so, what we'll cover is, we'll start off with innovation. I'll ask the panelists to share their views on this topic, and also maybe something their organizations have done over the last 2 to 3 years, even pre-pandemic. So that's one. The second theme we like to explore is, how do you embed this, right? It's great to have a panel. It's great to have, a council in the organization, but how do you push it deep in the organization, right? Each one of them runs huge organization. How do you get a culture of innovation in place? That's the second theme we will do. And then the third part, right, we'll do a little bit of crystal ball gazing, right? I spoke about some of the trends. We are where we are. I think the only thing is certain is the future will be different. I don't think we know all of it, but I think we can see some contours of it taking shape, right? So that's the third part. We'll get to it. So hopefully about 15 minutes each over the next time, and give us some time. So with that in mind, I think maybe I'll start Vineet, and we'll reverse the order every time we go through. Maybe, and then my screen I can see Vineet first, and we'll go to DCU, and then we'll follow up with Lars. But Vineet, maybe 2 or 3 minutes, quick context as how you see it, the world changing. But I think more importantly, any innovation story that you could share, something that Bestseller has done, both what, and I think a little bit of the how also, right? That would be good for our audience to listen about, or what's been happening. And then the same question to DC, and the same question to Lars, right? So any specific innovation done by the business, and how did it happen, or what's the behind the headlines of the press story behind it? Over to you, Vineet.
Yeah, thanks, Abhishek. I think you really captured it right. It has been a very difficult time, and I think a time that we've never seen or prepared for. I think in none of the strategies across, even of survival, we thought that businesses will be shut like this globally and just not in one country. So I think we've been about 13 years in the country, a very young organization. I think if I have to say it, we have been reinventing ourselves, and we have been rethinking about how do we stand out differently. There are many retail companies, there are many fashion companies. So I think this is a part of the culture that we've built, innovating, and I think we've done many things differently. And I'll just not take a context from the last 2 years, wherein people were opening franchise stores. We were always opening retail. We were the first early movers to online commerce, e-commerce, and today about 24% of our business is e-commerce. Before the pandemic, also about 16% of our business was e-commerce. So we've tried to do many things. Also, being a young organization, young talent, you need to give them opportunity to try out new things. Whether it's our campaigns like Super Saturday that we do, it's like one-day flash sale. It's something which is very different to no one else who can do it. We have 3 hours, 4 hours queue to get into the store, and many things we've done. But I think one thing that in the last 2-3 years we've been focusing on is how to make digital life in Bestseller. Whether it's about our employees, whether it's about our consumer, we started this initiative of digital transformation about 3 years back, and I think that definitely helped us. While a lot of people, when they went into the pandemic, they were figuring out how to connect to employees. We already had something that could connect to employees, and we could do it digitally. We could manage design. We could manage product. A lot of garments cannot be done offline. It needs to be done offline because someone needs to measure the product, all that. A good part is that we had already started this 3D journey of 3D garment design, 3D everything. So I think that helped us manage the pandemic. In fact, we launched every season in time during the pandemic also. We did not have to struggle to do it. But I think one thing that we really figured and thought that will stand out is something called a virtual store. People are used to going to store, and this is not going to change. We love the space, we love the environment, we love the experience of touch feel, even trying out few things. So we created actually a virtual store. Now you can go to Jack and Jones. It's called Jack and Jones Unmatched, and you can go to the virtual store. You can also have a VR headset, and you can be inside the store, and you can pick products and even add it to your basket and everything. And even if you do not wear, you can actually choose every product. You can customize the product and you can add it. And the good part is we also looked at the sustainability side of it, because that's something which I think pandemic has pushed a lot of youngsters to start looking at it. Am I consuming right? Am I consuming right enough, or am I consuming too much? So every product when you buy in that virtual store is only made once you order. So there's no this truckloads of garments that is got made, put up in warehouses. Everything is made to order, not made to size, but made to order. Whenever you order, we produce it and we ship it. And all of that is a virtual experience. So I think that's something we really tried to innovate because we have very young consumers. The age group of people TG handle is very, very young. So I think for them also it was relevant. They were spending a lot more time on the digital. Good part is that we started this much before the pandemic. So actually we could launch it during the pandemic. When the first pandemic hit, I think we were almost ready with the virtual store. But then we waited for the right opportunity to launch it. And then the moment the first pandemic ended or the lockdown ended, we opened up the virtual store. And we've seen quite a decent amount of traction. We don't promote it too much. Currently, we're still trying to look at the testing because the experience needs to be really tested with you. We can't open it to us. But whatever we've seen is amazing. And now our intent is every time when we launch a collection in the store, it will also be in the virtual store. So I think that's something which we did innovatively. The other thing which came, I think, which we've done again through digital is our entire e-commerce shoot is now not done on models anymore. It's done through AI. So we shoot it on a dummy and then we put it on a real person. Obviously, it came from a problem statement because a lot of foreign models are not available in the country during the pandemic. Everyone went back. And then how do you get product live on e-commerce? And we wanted to have the consistency on the e-commerce. And that's when we developed this AI with one of our partners where digitally we change everything of the person and the product is shot on a dummy. And today our speed to market on e-commerce is actually become 2 weeks faster than what it used to be earlier. And we don't have to ship garments across the country for shoots, find models. There's no issue of how many garments can you shoot. It's purely fully on tech. I think we've tried to do a few stuff purely around the consumer side of it. That has helped. I think why we could do it faster was we started this journey earlier. So I think I know a lot of people who've struggled in between just to figure out how to get teams online and have and I think it needs to be an inherent part of it. And being a young consumer, young company, young employee company, we had to build this before. I think that's definitely helped. Also, I think we got a lot of insights for what was happening in China with our businesses there. We have a very large business there. So we looked at that much before the pandemic hit us, but we had to also look at it much more during the pandemic to see how have they reacted, how have our European counterparts reacted, because they were ahead of the wave. The wave hit India a little later. So a lot of global learning, we could actually work around with it beforehand. But some of our problems were our problem, like this AI shoot is our problem because there you can easily get models. It was a problem which was in our country only. So we've tried to do a lot around that. And now we actually hold all our meetings online like others do. But we started it almost second day when lockdown happened, we were online already. So I think a lot of this has happened on the consumer side, especially e-commerce. As you said, a lot of traction is moving e-commerce. We already had a large share of e-commerce. So for us, the journey was faster. And there are some more things coming on, but I think it's premature to share.
Thanks, Vineet. That's remarkable, and I think being prepared always helps, right? I think my thought goes out to those poor models who lost out on future jobs because a model, whatever, AI thing has taken over, right? Talk about job relevance. So
yeah, you still have to pay for the space, right? You have to still pay for the space.
It's one not that then you license your face art.
Yeah, so the face license is definitely there, but look at how the convenience, actually the problem started and it became more convenient. I think a lot of people who run e-commerce, especially on models, this is a nightmare. to find the right model, to find the right minimum requirement to put it, because end of the day, everything is a cost. And now we just have our own grid at our warehouse. We pick the product the moment it reaches, and in about 8 hours, it is online. The speed is very, very critical from that perspective.
No, definitely, and speed is money, right? So that's really good.
True.
Good. So that's good context. How kind of adversity kind of leads to innovative business model and gets there. Lars, we'll jump to you. Love to hear from you, your perspective. From Swarovski, anything that has fueled innovation over the last couple of years, and then what drove it, right?
And hi, everyone. So I think very similar to what Vineet mentioned with regards to what Bestseller has done and how Bestseller has tried to tackle the situation we all have been in over the last 2 years. But I think it's not only the last 2 years. I think it was a necessity for all organizations and companies to constantly reinvent themselves as a company, as a brand. I think COVID and the entire situation we are all in at the moment has just been an accelerator, as we hear so often in so many different contexts. So for Swarovski, it was a similar situation. We were already working on certain ideas and strategies, how we can react to whatever, what you also mentioned, Abhishek, the change in customers' needs and also the change in customers' behavior. And when we say customers' behavior, for us, our biggest target group really is millennials and Generation Z shoppers, and their behavior has been changing constantly. So we were already working on a full transformation of the brand before the start of COVID. And when I say a full transformation, it really is the biggest transformation that the company has gone through throughout the last 126 years of history. Where we are really looking at it holistically with I would say 360 degrees approach. And we're looking at the brand itself, at our communication, at our distribution, but also at our product assortment and our organization itself. And when I look at the process, of course, you always have, for any innovation or transformation, you need a trigger. And I think that trigger in this case was the market environment, and for the most part, the customer behavior. And I think we all have to understand that we are living in a world of constant change, where change is going to be the only constant, pretty much. And COVID has just further accelerated that. So there was a clear trigger for us to respond to. And the idea was really to just turn the entire brand inside out. And then as a next step, of course, it was for us to define and to develop that new brand strategy. And I think that's the most critical part. And I am pretty sure we will touch on that a few more times throughout this discussion. The most important part is the internal communication and the involvement of the internal teams to get the entire team's understanding and buy-in. Why are we changing? Why are we in a need to innovate, in a need to transform, to really create that innovation or transformation culture? And I think that was the most important part. And then, of course, as a next step, it was the implementation, which is currently at full speed, I would say. So we have launched a new store concept. We have changed our organization on a global level. We have changed our new design language when it comes to our assortment, but also when it comes to our communication. And the idea is to really lift what we call the center of gravity of Swarovski towards the more attainable luxury space, coming from a more premium positioning previously. And then, of course, as we are in a constant world of change, it's important to not stop after the implementation, but to constantly review and refine the implementation of the new strategy, of that transformation strategy, I would say. And if I just look at some very, I would say, tangible examples, what we have done very similar to what Vineet has mentioned, digitalization being a major part of this transformation, where we have, similar to the virtual showroom or virtual store, launched in-store video opportunities where the customer can connect via our online shop with the store teams via a video call in an actual Swarovski store to then have them walk them virtually through the actual store and introduce them to the new collection, even try on product for them, because for jewelry it's always difficult to just look at pictures. You need to see, especially for crystals, how they actually sparkle in the light, the sizes when you put them on, etc., etc. And then the team can actually walk the customer through the purchase and through the transactions while they are connected via video call. And then, of course, when it comes to digitalization, also the entire omni-channel development, where we have really implemented a few initiatives where we are connecting online and offline to really make it a seamless customer journey. I think customers have developed quite a bit throughout COVID, and expectations of customers, not only when it comes to purpose and values and sustainability expectations, but also when it comes to how seamless the customer journey actually should be. So that has developed tremendously during COVID. So we want to make sure that we can really link offline and online with click and collect initiatives, click and reserve initiatives, and even connect with any third-party marketplaces in India where people can buy, let it be Mintra or Tata Click or Agiolux, buy products on these platforms and then pick up in a Swarovski boutique, which is something that is also quite innovative, I would say, from an omni-channel perspective.
Thanks, Lars. I think doing a full reorg and the new kind of move towards the brand, while at the same time dealing with, I'm sure, numerous other things, very challenging, but I'm sure at the same time very rewarding too, right? And we'll delve a little deeper into it as we move on. DC, moving to you. Grocery retail in some ways has remained the same. In some ways, I'm sure it's never been exactly like how it was. Love to get your perspectives, moving from luxury to daily essentials, right? How has that part of the retail environment changed?
No, thanks, Abhishek, and fantastic to hear Vineet's and Lars' story on how they made the transformation. See, for us, you will all recall that I think for a legacy retailer, the biggest challenge has been how fast this whole conversation of omni-channel, people or companies can shift. And in terms of innovation, I think I would call the fact that we could transform so quickly. And I'll give you some numbers pre-pandemic from a very low single digit, actually, in this April, May, the second lockdown. Our mix through what you call delivery, whether it's through WhatsApp or our app or our website or through phone, or we even put a chatbot, actually went up 10 times. And for us, it's a very big transformation. And I think, to me, that though it's not an innovation, but the fact that we could partner with very like-minded startups and create an ecosystem. For example, last year in March, and the moment the lockdown started, we couldn't get our staff to the store. Public transport was shut. The buses, the trains weren't working. Not everybody in store staff has a car or a bike. Very few of them have. People turned up, and you'll be surprised. We tied up with Uber within a week, 10 days of the lockdown started. And we did a formal understanding and agreement with Uber. And we had 1,000 cars at our store. In fact, the unit economics work out much better than a normal delivery. On a motorcycle. You can deliver 2 grocery orders or 3. And it will take you an hour and come back. And you could make 6, 7 such trips. Delivering maybe 22 orders in a day. In a car, you can make it 40. Because you can put it in the dicky, in the back seat, on the front seat. And we trained the Uber drivers, on the contactless delivery. And you can just imagine with 1,000 cars for many, many weeks. It was like a revolution for us. We couldn't have ramped up that kind of capacity. There was no question that you could be hiring more people when there's a lockdown. And in fact, your own staff, 100% of that itself is not able to come back. But to go and hire for delivery, and right now we all have got second vaccinated. It sounds really simple, but if you go back to last April, May, June, with the unknown, it wasn't easy to do. So I think, to my mind, the fact that we could make that quick transition, and everybody you speak to now will tell that, as far as digital transformation is concerned, what would have happened in 5 years has happened in 1 year. For us, I think that leap on omni-channel has happened. and it can be called digital, it can be called omni-channel, whatever you may call it. And I think it all boils down to the culture of the culture of the organization, and it's a long journey. Now we've formalized it, we've added our own fleet, we've worked out a unit economics. It's far better for us than it was ever in pre-pandemic. So frankly, this whole delivery business used to be loss-making pre-pandemic. I think we've been able to work around that. And that is the holy grail, the unit economics for an e-commerce delivery. And to me, innovation is something I think which every leader will have to now work on to survive in this very hyper-competitive. And nowadays you see, at least in our industry, from 10 minutes to half an hour to 1 hour, there's no end to delivery. I just hope it doesn't become 10 seconds delivery also. I think there's a lot of hype, a lot of players which started doing delivery of groceries even shut that also. So I think there's a lot of change happening very quickly. The dust will settle. Me and Vineet were speaking just before you had joined that this month people are coming back. And I think some of these learning and innovation may taper out, some bit of it when everybody comes out, the e-commerce sales may taper out, but I think in the long run, it's been good learning and great transformation.
Can I come in, Abhishek, there?
Yeah,
I think we are
yes.
already seeing a trend of e-commerce tapering since brick and mortar has started to pick. I think though those high numbers might not remain, the base might just remain there, and the percentage might just swing. But all I'm saying is consumers will still want experiences. And I think in India, typically, where I think it is more an experience and you go out actually to do it, shopping, even groceries also a large part shopping experience than essentials. I think that might not just taper out in a hurry. Though e-commerce is important, being digital is important, omni is critical today. But I think still brick and mortar strong plays on brick and mortar will remain strong across the.
In fact, I can add, sorry, Abhishek, I'll just add to not just on the grocery or apparel or online shopping. I saw today's Economic Times page 1 story that till now, last 1.5 years, thanks to Zoom and this work from anywhere, you can go to the hills as long as you have internet. You can work from anywhere. They said and companies will never call back employees, and there were some examples of companies saying for 3 years, 2 years, you don't have to come to the office. And today on the headlines of Economic Times, there is that only 12% of companies may agree to a hybrid model, and 88% companies want employees to come back. How quickly things change and how we go as a yo-yo from one extreme to we come back. And I'm linking it to the point Vineet said that people are coming back, and what I mentioned that summer sales are tapering.
Yeah.
So there's a great comeback.
That's very, and we'll actually, in about a few minutes, we'll come back and delve a little bit. I will ask each one of you to do a little bit of crystal ball gazing, right? But just kind of, and really inspiring stories from all three of you, right? I think consistently the speed of change, the magnitude of change, while having limited resources and doing all of this, really inspiring, right? And I think that's what it needs. However, I have a broader question, right? See, crisis always brings out, right? Sleeves rolled up. Approvals are faster. We are a little bit more risk taking because there is nothing else. That's the only choice available. Maybe less meetings are sometimes better, right? Because decisions get taken. There's less debate, but action happens, right? All of these would have never happened. I guess the one question in my mind is, do we always need a crisis, right? And hopefully there isn't any new crisis coming in the next 5 years. The question then remains is, how do you take some of the learnings you've had, right? How do you come up with these innovative models, whether it's partnerships, whether it's AI models, and whether it's like virtual stores and things like that, right? How do you come up with the new ideas on an ongoing basis, right? Without them being born out of crisis, right? So that's around culture, that's around the organization, so that everybody's thinking about how do I do things better, and in a lot more drastic way, right? Rather than incremental change. So I think maybe we'll start with you, Lars. The question is, what do you do so that this gets embedded? People are thinking about rather than waiting for others to do something differently, right? And challenging it. how do you embed this culture within the organization? Anything that you've done, anything that you've learned, which has really worked? And we'll kind of go around on and get reactions. Lars from you, then DC from you, and we'll end with Vineet, right? So.
Yeah, very happy to explain my view or share my view on this. And I fully agree. It's going to be the biggest challenge for us to continue with this mindset and to continue to nurture this innovation culture that has established itself basically throughout the last 2 years out of necessity and because of the market environment and the situation we were all in. And if we look at culture itself, what does it actually mean? And it's about people, right? And it's basically the actions, the beliefs, and the experience of people in an organization or in a team. And how do we make sure that we can further enhance the innovation culture, innovation mindset that we have established over the last years? I think very important is our role as leaders. And I think here the role of creating that culture and enhancing that culture and fostering that culture is really to model, to coach, and to care about our people. But when I say people, it's also important to make sure we have the right people who support that innovation mindset and to get them involved and to get their understanding for the need to create that innovation mindset. I'm pretty sure we are all very aware of situations when we hear, we have always done it this way, why should we do it in a different way, right? So this is something that is, I think it's poison for an innovation culture, and we have to make sure that people don't have that mindset anymore. So I think it's important to create more than just an innovation culture. I think we need to create some sort of an innovation movement where people feel ownership of that movement, and they understand the needs. And we all know, I think the phrase culture eats strategy for breakfast. I think culture pretty much eats everything for breakfast. So the importance of culture, I think it's obvious. And we need to make sure we have the right people in the right place, starting with ourselves. I think culture needs to be leader-led, but then we need to make sure that we can establish followers or change makers, which can be the management team or can come from all levels throughout the organization, which are, I would say, go-to people that are needed to convince the rest of the organization that this movement is the right thing to do and is the right direction for the company and the organization. So I would say is the people and the mindset that is absolutely critical to maintain the innovation culture. Then it's super important to have also the right processes in place. And then when I say right processes, it means dynamic processes. You can have people supporting an innovation as much as you want if the processes don't allow them to implement any innovation. So all efforts are basically without any impact if the processes of an organization don't allow innovation. And then I think also very important, once you're going through any innovations, to do regular check-ins with the organization. If you are still all on the same page when it comes to what are you working towards too, and when it comes to are we still all on the same page when it comes to is it the right thing to do what we are currently doing. So doing these regular check-ins and understanding the state of mind the organization is in, I think is absolutely critical. And last but not least, I think it's super important to celebrate success during any implementation of an innovation, but at the same time also to very openly talk about failure and to celebrate failure as a learning to a certain extent, because otherwise we are killing any innovation culture. If failure is being punished in a sense, I think people will be very reluctant to have that innovation mindset and to be open for any innovation implementations and to even also share ideas for future innovations. So I think it's the people, it's that mindset, it's constant check-ins and celebrating success as well as failures.
Thanks, Lars. So, clearly laying out the need for an innovation movement, right? I think many of those ideas resonated, and I could see the others also nodding their head. DC, from you, such a large organization, lots of people, how do you ensure that everybody feels part of this, right? Rather than just a headquarter driven exercise. Any suggestions you have for people listening to us?
So let me start, Abhishek, with what you asked first, that why it took a crisis, and without a crisis, can this change be made? And let me give you a philosophical answer. I mean, I wish it could, but I think everything, there is this great equilibrium in which we exist, and this resistance to change, it brings pain. And I was thinking, as you asked, that probably very few companies who have this culture to constantly say that they're under crisis, like a pandemic, and create a man-made crisis or an artificial crisis, or some companies which say it's always day one, it's like starting and you don't know anything yet and you're learning. I think that mindset of culture only can save you. Otherwise, it's very easier said than done. Fact is, it only takes, a jhatka to actually react to it. Every action is equal and opposite reaction. I think pandemic was a massive action and called for a reaction from companies to adapt. But when there is no action, I think there is a massive equilibrium, and thus there is no reaction, and equilibrium works. I think that's the way humankind is. It's very nice to say we can create, they should be. I think it's easier said than done. But to what Lars said, absolutely, I think the big learning, and it would be a pity to let this crisis go waste and to not learn that in our lifetime, we haven't seen a bigger action, and thus the reaction we all had to it. Can we, without having another such action or a pandemic, actually create a culture in the organization that we'll react to it and become better? I think that's the biggest challenge. Very easier said than done. But I think where's the choice in leaders but to not try it? So absolutely, whether it's my company or any, I think, how do you get all in my case, 7,000-8,000 associates? How do you get them on the same page? What if the leader feels that there's an action and you start to shake the equilibrium, but will everybody else also feel that there is something massive happening and there has to be reaction? I think it's all will be answered by culture. And what Lars said, and we always say on a lighter note, and I know for consultants we say this, like culture eats strategy for breakfast. Then sometimes we'll say execution eats strategy for breakfast. I think first of all, you need to have the strategy that you will create an artificial action, so you will react. Otherwise, it's a fact. It would have taken many years for a lot of companies to transform digitally what has happened in the last couple of months. And I think this is the biggest challenge for management, that do we really need such a challenge? And I will not be theoretical and say, yes, it can be done easily. I think it's very difficult. But if it can be done, and it must be attempted, otherwise we let the learnings of the pandemic go waste.
No, thanks, DC. And, I guess even us consultants would also have to refresh, right? It's been a tremendous point of learning for us also. So that's, and I think that's how sharp the world was changing and evolving, right? Vineet, over to you. Building on what you've heard from others, any things that you are planning to change from a personal level, organizational level, anything that you've learned which can help embed what both DC and Lars have referred to, right? Using this more as an opportunity to make some changes and really embed this thinking within the organization.
I think I pretty much agree to what DC and Lars said. I think it is the culture that can only innovate, otherwise you can't. And I'll give you example. And I think at Bestseller, at least in India, we don't need to imbibe or do something now. We did it 13 years back. We call it the ODD culture, the odd culture. And it came from thinking of who innovates the most. And these are the entrepreneurs, the young entrepreneurs. They find innovative ways to do things, right? India, maybe we say this, the Indian entrepreneur will figure out everything. So we started from this mindset 13 years back when we were setting up the company in India. What is the culture we want to live with or believe in? And I think we call it the odd culture, and we say we hire the odd people. And the odd for us is own, dare, and deliver. And I think if you have the ownership, if you have the dare, and you want to deliver it, innovation is part of life. And I think we hire for it, we train for it. Our entire framework of the performance management system, the competency framework is built around this own, dare, deliver, and even we retain for it and let people go also for it. It's taken us 13 years, and that's why I think for us, though pandemic was tough, and I will again say maybe relatively less tough because people are used to this. I think this pressure, which DC was saying, I think it comes because we are ready to let go people who don't live up to the culture of ODD, and I think that pushes everyone. And the only thing as management that we have to do a lot more is keep ensuring people are not penalized for failures, because that becomes the biggest worry. A small idea could be a very innovative idea from one person, but the other person could think it very differently. And I'll give you an example. One of our guys, a customer walked in and he wanted denim shorts, and we didn't have denim shorts, so he converted a denim into a denim short. Now, from his perspective, it's an ownership and it's a dare, or he delivered what the consumer wanted. But our organization thought that was integrated, because if the consumer comes back tomorrow and says, "I want this," no one knows that this was a short. So I think there's a fair line, and I think as an organization, we have to continuously keep telling people what is the thin line between innovating and having others help. So I think we've done a lot. Are we done with it? No. I think we'll have to keep doing this forever. And we keep saying that we are a startup. It's a 13-year-old startup now in India. Hopefully the next 10 years is also a startup. Because if you have to understand India, and India cannot be run from a boardroom sitting in Bombay, Delhi. It needs to be run in smaller cities. Every market is so different. The consumer behavior in a city like Bombay changes, and we sell fashion, right? It's so different, and I am sure DC will say the atta that people want to have in Madhya Pradesh is so different to Bihar and stuff. And this is how India is. And I think if we do not allow this innovation, this people being able to take decisions, it just doesn't work here. So I think it was a big change from what we do globally, but we had to adapt to the Indian environment, and I think we've done a lot. A lot more needs to be done on our side.
Thanks, panelists. I guess a lot of food for thought, how to really continue with the innovation in the future. Whether it's a movement, whether it's organizational changes, whether it's rewarding and recognizing failures, whether it's being open to ideas, a lot more. And I think the consensus is it's not going to be easy. I think it will be one of the hardest things to do. But I guess if we as leaders don't do it, then it will not happen, right? So I think that's what we owe to everybody in the organization as well as our consumers, is to keep at it. If we don't push, then it will definitely not happen. So really good input from the panelists. Now we'll jump to the third and the last part of the discussion. And DC, I'll this time start with you. So we've spoken a lot. There's been a rapid change. The question I'm going to frame for the panel is what does the future look like, right? And not future as in 50 years ago from now, right? But 3 to 5 years. Take a time pick. Will we be getting instant delivery through drones? Will everything be digital? Will people be back in stores? Will it be mix of both? Will we consolidate? Will we proliferate? There are numerous ways to look at it. Hopefully we will look back at this recording 3 years from now together and either have a big laugh or kind of say I said so. But let's all go out on a limb. We love to see from where you are sitting a couple of ideas that you think what the future holds. And we'll just go around again. We'll start with you, DC, go to Lars, and then end with Vineet. Love to get those builds in, and suggestions and ideas, and how you are viewing the world from your sector, from your company's perspective. And
absolutely. So Abhishek, coming to our industry, I think as me and Vineet said, that this whole ramp up of online just went like 10, 20 times up and is settling down. But the settling down is way above pre-pandemic. So to me, there is a role of the store. Retail stores are not going anywhere. Kiranas are not going anywhere. I think 3 to 5 years down the line, the physical infrastructure will remain. And I think what will change is retailers will have to add a lot of experience. If I get anything in the store at the same, I mean, if it's a simple product price, if I can get it online, then what is the need to come? So I think the big shift will be physical retailers will have to add a bit of experience. So it's worth customers' while to come out and spend that extra time to pick up their car, to, to change and, or to spend that money in an auto or a taxi to come to the mall or to the store. I think that we will see a much faster change. At the same time, I personally believe drones is a reality. If not in India, definitely in the world. Maybe even in India, drones would start. I think the shift to EVs has taken us all by surprise. We all thought it's a 10-year journey. It will be a very slow burn, 1 or 2% every year. But suddenly now you read yesterday's news that Ola says they're on time to deliver the scooters. And you've seen the Tata Motors and TPG investment. So I think things are moving quickly, very quickly, 3 to 5 years down the line. I think we would be a lot more efficient. What pandemic has also done is shown our fault lines on the business model, on the cost structures, clearly. And it would be a crime to go back to what it used to be. In fact, that saving needs to be invested in digital infrastructure. So I won't say drastic changes in consumer behavior. Obviously, the adoption of digital, of course, will keep happening. There is no question about it. But I think going back to basics and being an omni-channel retailer, to me now, there will be nothing called an online or an offline retail. So 3 to 5 years down the lines, probably this terminology would not exist. Everybody would be omni-channel. If you see, all online companies are putting up stores worldwide and in India and vice versa. And the two shall meet somewhere in the middle. So and I remember, 10, 20 years back when I started from FMCG to retail, people used to talk, oh no, modern trade has come. What will happen to the poor Kirana? Kirana shut, modern trade, a lot of them shut down. Then when e-commerce said, oh, what will happen to modern trade now that e-commerce has come? Then the conversation shifted to omni-channel. So I think you see the journey and the change. I think 3-5 years down the line, omni-channel or multi-channel would be the only terminology. And I think this whole conversation of offline versus online or all this would be put to rest to my mind.
Thanks, DC. So experience, EVs, efficiency, good builds kind of to look out for. And I think this entire thing about what's online and offline, I think it will make consultants' life very, very difficult. Every time somebody asks us, how big is this market, right? I fully agree. I think the line is like so blurred. We will say the market is 100, right? You cannot, it's getting increasingly difficult to say this is a online or an offline, right? I think that line will continue to blur. So maybe we'll just have one market size number, right? Rather than trying to do that. Lars, over to you. Love to get your reactions, as you've seen some of the changes across the world, but specifically in India, 3 to 5 years out, where do you see the consumers or the landscape being kind of thing?
Yeah, without repeating everything what DC just said, because I do agree with pretty much everything he says. I'm not so sure on the drones. I do believe it's going to be an important element for the future. Not sure about 3 to 5 years, but I would love to see it to increase speed in terms of delivery lead times. But I fully agree on the experience part and the importance and relevance of our retail stores when in terms of physical stores. We do see, and I do expect that the net sales share of online will continue to increase versus pre-COVID times. So I do agree that it's settling down versus during COVID times, but we will settle at a much higher base compared to pre-COVID, and it will continue to increase. And then I also believe that this whole online versus offline discussion is already outdated. And like you say, it's already not possible anymore to clearly say what kind of sales is driven online, what kind of sales is driven offline. I mean, we can just look at buy online, pick up in store. So do you allocate this to an offline store sales, or do you allocate this to an online store? Very, very difficult. One of the reasons why I strongly believe that the physical retail store will remain very relevant is the experience piece that DC mentioned. We do see still a significant difference in terms of average transaction size offline versus online. And I think that is what shows the experience element that the offline store is contributing. In today's world, unfortunately, we are not able yet to provide the same experience online versus offline, and hence we are able to drive more pieces per transaction and also a higher average price point per product in the offline store. And as long as this is the case, I think the offline store will remain highly relevant. Also, when it comes to personalization, I think in today's world, we are still able to drive a much higher degree of personalization in the offline world as compared to the online world. And I think that will be another big focus for all brands and all retailers moving forward, to drive and develop much higher capabilities when it comes to digital personalization, whether it is in terms of product design, or product development, or much simpler in terms of communication, to be much more personalized in our approach to our customers and to the consumer in general. Other than that, I think one big trend that I think will continue to develop is the change in customer expectations, moving away from a pure price-driven view to a much more value and purpose-driven view. So I think people will continue to care much more about sustainability, and not only when it comes to the environment, but also when it comes to corporate social responsibility, etc. So I do see that this will be another very relevant trend that we will see continuing moving forward with the next 3 to 4 years. Yeah, I think that's on a high level is what I expect. And I love your crystal gaze analogy as a crystal company. So everybody should have a crystal ball at home.
We'll once we kind of come to your stores and we kind of pick this up through a proper experience and a personalized great experience with higher number of pieces and revenue for you, Lars. So hopefully
absolutely.
So a great kind of additions to building on to what DC started, right? And I think the push on this expectations changing and evolving. I think, you know, as we've seen, some of these things tend to be hockey sticks. You know, it takes some time to get momentum, and then boom, you know, and suddenly it becomes much more widespread. Vineet, I know you're going last, but things to reinforce or to add to that list as you see it from a apparel and a fashion perspective?
I think from an apparel and fashion perspective, our thought is a little bit different. While I think e-commerce is now hygiene, omni is hygiene. I think the only thing that we are looking at is how do we fulfill that omni thing faster, right? Today, a lot of this is done through warehouses, stores, but the store distribution network is not as much. India still has a big challenge on retail store distribution. So from our perspective, we are ramping up our retail distribution very much. We will open up 100 stores this year. We've never opened so many stores ever in our life today. So we have about 300 stores, and we're going to open 100 stores this year. And I think the other part of that, what we're seeing, what we're trying to do is expand the size of the store. I think one thing that the COVID has done is given us this big thought about space. If you see a crowded store today, I think people don't visit. We've already started to see this. If there are too many customers, people shy away from coming in. And I think while giving this experience, this is going to stay in our mind for a long time. And I think that we are increasing store sizes. We are also looking at the assortment, also with e-commerce and omni. I think the assortment is a less of a challenge now, because you can have a tab in the store and you can say, okay, if it's not there, I'll still get it to you. and will reach in 8 hours, 12 hours, or 48 hours, depending on where the product is. So I think this thin line that was between e-commerce and brick and mortar is actually gone, and that's actually been a good part of us for retail. Our other part that we are trying to see is how has the category moved, because I think you said this, you had to find a shirt, right? I think that's the biggest change that we are seeing, that the category is moving and moving very, very fast. Athleisure has become now part of work life, right? It was only part of home life. Now it's part of work life. A lot of people in our offices now want to come with athleisure, and as a fashion company, for us it's fine, but there's so many other companies who do not. But it's going to change. So I think there are few things which the pandemic has done, and they are permanent changes. And I think fashion companies will have to react to it. The other part that I think, which I think DC and Lars both touched, is how do you improve experience? And because the consumer has now become one. So earlier there was an e-commerce consumer who was very different, was behaving very different, was only looking for discounts, and there was a brick and mortar customer who was not looking, he was only looking for experience. But nowadays thin lines have gone in, and the same consumer is also wanting experience and at times also wanting convenience. So how do you change the consumer store experience? And I think what WeChat has done globally very, very soon will happen in India. I think I think DC told about the Kiranas. I think they were the earliest adapter of WhatsApp, right? During the pandemic, they actually did everything through WhatsApp. And I think how WhatsApp improves the e-commerce piece, how does that come in? I think the organizations will have to get ready for the next wave. So I think a lot of this social commerce is now going to be a bigger thing to focus on. So earlier e-commerce, and then other omni, and now I think social commerce is the next very large part, because consumers will like to buy from where they are seeing the products, or someone or a blogger or influencer who's wearing it. So I think how do we homogenize this entire thing is going to become very important. And I think a large part of investment, while it's happening in retail, it needs to also happen on tech. And I think if people do not improve their tech stack, I think they're going to be behind the curve. And I think from our perspective, next 3 years is critically going to be how does the consumer behavior change? Is our tech ready? Is our distribution good enough to reach the consumer faster? And I think so. This is all going to rotate around that stuff.
Okay. Thanks, Vineet. Good set of list to add on to already a remarkable list, which I'm sure many of our listeners are kind of jotting down. Before I summarize, I know we are coming on the top of the hour and to close, but any additional comments, DC, Lars, from you over and above? Otherwise, I could take the next couple of minutes and summarize. But
no, over to you, Abhishek. I think fantastic points by Vineet and Lars. Good learning.
Lars, anything from you to add to the comments already made, or should I kind of?
No, all good. Thanks very much.
Cool. So this has been fabulous, and just to kind of, I was just jotting down some notes as to what our kind of panelists sitting in the hot seat had for the future, right? So we'll come back. Hopefully, all 4 of us will meet for a meal or a drink 3 years from now and look through it. So what I heard clearly was physical will remain.
In order the drinks by the drone, though.
Exactly. That's okay. That's where DC will take you on that. So physical will remain. So we will meet physically. I think that's a clear part. I think unanimous thing that experience will start to play a much more differentiating role. Obviously, experience means different things to different people. It's not whether it's more space, whether it's better assortment, whether it's more personalized. I think each one of us look for different things. So we need to be kind of aware of that beyond the product. Very clear that new technologies will be embedded, whether it's digital, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's EVs, whether it's drones. Those will start to take a much larger part. Some ahead, visible to us, some behind the scene, right? I think that ramp up is definitely happening. And then I think the last part is, which has always happened and keeps us awake at night, but also gives us opportunity. The consumer will keep on evolving, right? Whether it's their ask for sustainability, whether it's ask for choices, whether it's ask for different experiences. That's if nothing else changes, consumers will keep changing, and that will keep all businesses alive, and that will keep everyone thinking about how do we meet new expectations, what do we do differently to obviously deliver to the changing needs. So this has been a great panel, lots of ideas, lots of suggestions, lots of stories. And I think I've learned quite a bit. Hopefully all of you have. And, thanks to DC, thanks Lars, and thanks Vineet for sharing your ideas and suggestions. And have a good rest of the day and enjoy the rest of the sessions on this.
Thank you everyone for putting your point of view. Now we'll proceed to the next session. Stay connected with us.